And you need to have that, especially once again. I mean, we talked about it last week. Jalen Hurts being able to be that rushing quarterback and can do a lot with his feet. You need to give him as much protection as possible. And just the way they were able to come in as that next man up mentality and continue to build those holes for Miles Sanders, I think that was the biggest thing that I was able to see on.
Back at it again. It's the Football Playbook with your boy, RIC, in the place to be. Ric Serritella, telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft, and your Philadelphia Eagles. And to do it each and every Wednesday is none other than Kayla Santiago of Delmarva Sports, checking in each and every week. Good morning, Kayla. How are you today? Soaring high in another undefeated week.
Hey, I'm great. 4-0. What can I say? It feels pretty good to be the only undefeated team in the NFL.
Yeah, we're keeping the train moving. It's not going to be easy this week with Kyler Murray and the other Bird gang. But before we get into that one, let's unpack from the Jaguars week. Dougie P getting the standing ovation that you said he deserved. So it was good to see that. And they came out swinging, those Jaguars did.
Yeah, honestly, I was scared. I was sitting on my couch watching this game, and I was like, the Eagles really haven't played in this bad weather so far this year. Is this why they're not playing well? Are they just thrown off by the introduction of Doug Peterson? But, at the end of the day, of course, it didn't matter. They got the win. I just think they came out extremely flat. I think they were getting used to the weather. And the Jags looked really good. But then I think the Eagles figured out this is still a game. They still need to get back in it. And it was the first real adversity I think they faced so far throughout the season in terms of really having to come back, not scoring any points. And they were able to do so. And I think that's just another thing you can check off that makes them a good team.
Yeah, week one wasn't really a true barometer. I don't think with the Lions, there was a lot of things happening there. But you're right. I mean, they fell behind. The weather wasn't exactly great. And they hung in there. And you know what? That big gutsy call by Sirianni, the fourth down to go for it after the 2-minute warning. They missed the extra point, but they went up at halftime 20-14 and never looked back. And then the defense began to take over. Oh, by the way, Hassan Reddick, your NFC Defensive Player of the Week, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 sacks. That hasn't happened since 1950. It seems like every week we're here talking about a monumental Eagles defensive performance. One week it was Slay, then it was Brandon Graham. This week is Haason Reddick. Hey, they pay him the big bucks for a reason, especially Fletcher Cox. These guys are playing up to the money now.
And it was so good to see. I mean, when I tell you I got off of my couch and was cheering for this guy because it was just so exciting. The pressure that he was able to bring in and a pretty decent offensive line in the Jags. Obviously, they have some things to work on too. Trevor Lawrence just was not able to scramble out of the pocket whatsoever. The pressure was coming after that first quarter. And Reddick, I mean, he just put on a show. He was so exciting to watch. I was like, how is this guy doing this right now? Constantly, consistently, he was in his face, and he really deserved that award for this week as well.
Yeah, and we saw the offensive line step up in a big way too. Sayamalu goes down. In steps Opeta. Malata goes out, and they get a great game by the backups all around. The offensive line, we talked about this tremendous depth, and I'm not sure Dillard will be back this week for the Cardinals game. I think he has a chance to return for the Cowboys game, though, next week. It's looking better and better, though. A lot of people wanted Dillard shipped out along with Jalen Reagor here. It's looking a little bit better. I talked about it's always great to have insurance on the offensive line, especially at the tackle position. There's just not enough of these guys walking the planet.
And you need to have that, especially once again. I mean, we talked about it last week. Jalen Hurts being able to be that rushing quarterback and can do a lot with his feet. You need to give him as much protection as possible. And just the way they were able to come in as that next man up mentality and continue to build those holes for Miles Sanders, I think that was the biggest thing that I was able to see on Sunday with this offensive line. I was worried, honestly, when Mailata and then Samalu also went down the offensive line. I'm like, oh, geez, it's raining. This is not good. Somebody else is going to get injured. And they really stepped up where they needed to. Now, will it be the same next week? Will both of those guys be back? We don't really know at this very moment. And that's a little bit worrisome against the Cardinals. But honestly, I think I really liked how they played, and then just opening holes for Miles Sanders was really, really fun to watch against a very good rushing defense.
Yeah. Kayla Santiago on the football playbook. Richard Rosania. I don't think Dillard will be back for this game. I think he has a shot to be back for Dallas. And good to see some of our old friends, Ocam's Razor, Sammy Chan, new to the show. Welcome on in. Giving kudos to Howie Roseman. We'll have Mike Tanier on to close out the show, who did a really good in-depth article on Howie Roseman in the New York Times and just the way this roster was constructed, Kayla. We saw it on the offensive line on Sunday. We saw it in the secondary. And you know what? Some people in the chat giving Zach McPherson and Josiah Scott some flack. I thought they stepped up and did an outstanding job. Now, Scott got picked on a little bit, gave up that one big play to Christian Kirk, I think, for 44 yards, had a penalty, I think, as well. But for the most part, I mean, Scott's been banged up too. You know, I don't have a problem with bringing in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to kind of split time there in the slot, but then you got to account for that at the other safety spot. It does look, though, McPherson could be in for another workload. We don't know the status of Slay. Avonte Maddox could be out once again. Luckily, DeAndre Hopkins is serving the final game of his suspension, so they don't have to face one of the top wide receivers in the league. The Cardinals do get back Rondell Moore. They've got A.J. Green on the roster, who's a veteran. How do you shape up this Eagles secondary against this Cardinals passing attack that likes to throw the ball around the playground?
Honestly, I mean, that's the one thing I'm worried about, because you look at this secondary, and we've mentioned that Darius Slay really is the most talented back there. But when you talk about a leader and a guy that can communicate, that's Avonte Maddox. And not having him back there, I mean, it was noticeable early in the game. And just the way he's been able to step up and play so well for Philadelphia. Not saying it was a huge drop off, but they definitely are a lot better when he's back there in the secondary now. I'm worried because I think the Cardinals are going to pick on the secondary a lot. I think knowing that Avonte Maddox and Darius Slay, if they are not healthy or ready to come back, the Cardinals are going to target, and they're going to have to be on their toes. I think Scott had a good game as well, but I think that he is really going to have to be even better coming into this Cardinals game, for the pure fact that they know exactly who's not going to be there. They know their best two guys aren't going to be in the secondary, so they're going to go to them. And if you're the Cardinals, I mean, that's the smart thing to do. And I'm worried about that, honestly, for this week going in, not being at full strength back there.
Hey, Kayla, sorry about that. Experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty with Rick. But you know, I want to pick your brain about this. You know, I know you guys, talked about this defensive line. I know you guys talked about this pass rushing guys like Hassan Reddick and Fletcher Cox, coming into the fold. But, I'm curious to know, what's been your thoughts on Jordan Davis' impact. He kind of had a sighting in the Jaguars game. He had a really huge tackle for loss. And I'm just curious to know what's been your evaluation of Jordan Davis as a player and his contribution and his role right now as it stands behind Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, I think the rotation of him coming in is great. I think he probably wants to play a little bit more than he is being put in. But once again, this team is so deep with how they're rotating. It's just working. And he's getting better and better each and every game. Being able to get those big tackles on Travis Etienne too was something that I thought was really, really worth looking at in that Jaguars game, because he's not easy to bring down, but he's an absolute beast. And I think there's going to be a situation where there's injuries on the defensive line and he's going to be asked to step up and he's going to be ready to be right there and go right at it. Right now, I think the rotation is perfect at what they're doing because there's no drop off. You talk about a lot of teams looking at that first defensive line and saying, okay, well, now I'm worried about who my second string guys are going to be. I'm worried if somebody gets injured. For the Eagles, at least right now, that's not the case, because you look at a guy like Jordan Davis that can step up and progressively gets better every single week. He's been one of my favorite players to watch easily. He's been so good, really, really good for this Eagles team. And I'm excited to see how he progresses as the season goes along.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you on that. Jordan Davis is in the perfect situation, right? He has the opportunity to play behind guys like Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and he doesn't have to get forced into a situation that he may not be comfortable in or may not be ready for. And this Philadelphia Eagles team, they've been, taking everyone by storm. No pun intended to that Jaguars game, right? But they've one of my fears, and I want to get your perspective on this. One of my fears is that this team is peaking a little too early. What's your thoughts on that perspective?
I think that, in my opinion, I would disagree for the pure fact that I think they're very good early, yes, but at the same time, Jalen Hurts is getting better each and every game. Jalen Hurts is kind of showing what he can do. Every single game, you see less rushing yards and more passing yards. You see that he's more accurate in the pass game. Even the short little passes, the little floaters that are perfectly placed, making sure that his guys aren't getting killed, making sure that he throws it away enough where they can run and not just completely get tackled right away. I mean, his IQ is getting better each and every game. And I think that that's what this season is about. Yes, they're very good early, but you look at the rest of the schedule, and honestly, I'm not really worried looking at rest of the schedule. Everybody says they have the third easiest in the NFL. They might, right? But they also had an easy schedule the Super Bowl year back in 2017 too. So who really knows what's going to happen? But you look at this team right now, I think they're on track exactly where they need to be. Do I think they're going to go undefeated all year long? Absolutely not. Do I think it's going to be a Steelers situation from last year? I don't. But I do think that they're doing everything they need to at the right time. I do get worried a little bit when you look at the starters and, you see the injuries that happened last week with Darius Slay and Devonta Maddox. And we're kind of going back to the cycle of, all right, next man up mentality, who can really step up. And that worries me because you're putting all your best guys out and playing them a lot. But I think right now where they're at is just going to be continued success for the rest of the season.
Yeah, this team has a lot of depth, and their depth is going to allow them to, win the war of attrition, if you ask me. And you said something really key, and we got our guy Rick back into the fold. I'm going to bring him back up very soon, but I want to squeeze this question in before I bring him back. You brought up something very interesting. The Eagles have Jalen Hurts and his approach to the game, his approach to preparation, his mentality. I think back to a play in that Jaguars game where they were down 14-0. I believe it was 4th and goal. And he took it upon himself and muscled his way into the end zone. That play is a microcosm to how he's approached not only football, but how he's approached his development, his growth, how he's approached the leadership position. What's your thoughts on just his mentality and how it permeates through this roster and how that can be the X factor in getting this team over the hump?
I think that all of those guys on the line and the running backs and whoever needs to, they want to block for Jalen Hurts. So they're going to do whatever they need to do to give him time to make that decision, to give him good IQ, and to be like, does he have time to figure out if he wants to run and gun it or time to pass it? I think the biggest thing out of an offensive line you can get from your quarterback is trust and making them want to go to battle for you each and every day. And he's been able to do that. I loved his mentality last year when he would say, rent is due every single day. But once again, he's not a guy that is just going to say these things. He shows it every single week. He is getting better statistically, watching him make those decisions, as you mentioned, going into the end zone and making sure he didn't get clobbered, but was able to get there with a little spin move and get the touchdown for the Eagles. I mean, his IQ, just as in his second year as a starter, is getting better. So watching him develop and seeing how he's bringing this team together, I mean, the Eagles are going to be as successful as Jalen Hurts is going to be and how he's going to lead this team. And I think he backs all of their success this season.
Hey, rain, sleet, or snow, them Eagles train to go, right? So,
absolutely.
Hey, Rick, I'm going to let you take over, my man. Kayla, it was great talking to you as always. I'll get back behind the scenes and start pulling the strings.
Yeah, thank you, Tone. Yeah, the trust and the confidence is oozing through the one Jalen Hurts pours. And shout out to Tone. Ocam's razor. No, I didn't steal the neighbor's internet today. My daughter Oceana's home from school sick, and she decided to run through my cable configuration like Miles Sanders ran through the Jaguars defensive line last week. So we're playing under some circumstances here on the Football Playbook show. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we talk to Kayla Santiago of Delmarva Sports. And, we always talk Eagles with you, Kayla. I know you can switch it up, though, and talk about the National Football League, because the Eagles are now the favorites in the NFC, and their win total down there at the Ocean Casino Resorts has gone from 9.5 to 12.5. So if you didn't get in on the early action play, you got to ante up a little bit more. But how do you see this NFC pecking order? Because I look around the league, the Rams, they look like they're having a Super Bowl hangover. They looked very beatable against the 49ers the other day. We saw the Packers pretty much dismantle the Bucs. Oh, by the way, Brady and Giselle hiring divorce lawyers yesterday, just another wrinkle into the Buccaneers season. I did say yesterday that I thought the top tier teams were in the AFC between the Bills and the Ravens. And who else is over there in the AFC? But, how do you kind of see, let's just stay with the NFC side of things for now. Where do you put the Eagles? They clearly are the only undefeated team. Who are the contenders? Who are they going up against here? Where do you have them in the pecking order?
Yeah, and I think you make a great point real quick about the AFC too, going back to that. It is much more competitive this season, in my opinion, than the NFC. I think you look at this conference right now, and listen, it is extremely early in the season, but there's not a lot of teams that I think realistically can compete and do well in the playoffs. You look at the Eagles right now, obviously they're a top team in the conference. I don't think you can count out the Rams. I just think they have too much talent. I do agree that they're having a little bit of that Super Bowl hangover, but it's still early in the season. I think they can figure things out. I can't look down on Tom Brady either. I think he's going to figure a way out to get this team back to the top, and then the Green Bay Packers too. Right now, if the season were to end today, not even looking at the record, I put the Eagles at 1 or 2 in the conference. I think you're going to have the Rams and the Eagles back-to-back against each other going to try to get at the top of the conference when this thing is all said and done. And I say that because I think everything going on in Tom Brady's personal life right now, I think is going to regress him just a little bit in the next few games because it's happening right here, right now. Listen, we don't know everything that's going on. It could just be for clickbait and for the headlines, realistically. But obviously, it has determined his play a little bit. I think he'll get it together as the season gets more and more. But right now, I mean, you lose a few crucial games, and that can really determine the standing. So when it's all said and done, I think the Rams and the Eagles, honestly, are going to be at the top of the conference unless something happens with Philadelphia where there's an injury, where there's anything like that to Jalen Hurts or A.J. Brown. But if this team's able to stay healthy, I think they can see themselves at the top with the Rams.
Yeah, and, when Brady went on his 10-day hiatus there in training camp and he came back and they asked him, hey, what's going on? He's like, yo, I'm 45. I'm married with kids. I got a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
I can tend to relate to the man. I think, it's not easy. It's very challenging being twice the age of your teammates and checking in and day out. And you are somewhat on a different maturity and mind frame level in terms of what's going on around your life. So I think it's going to be really tough for the Bucs. And we saw it against the Packers. The Packers might have something to say about that. I'm never going to count out the Rams, but let's not forget Stafford had surgery on that throwing elbow, right? Yeah. So the Chiefs were the other team that were slipping my mind. I still think whatever order you want to take them in, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens.
Oh, yeah.
I think those are the three superior. And that Ravens and Bills game could have went either way. I think those are the cream of the crop. And I think the Eagles, they're going to be out in Arizona in the desert. Take a good look around. They might be visiting that come February. But we'll hold off on the Super Bowl predictions. We'll just stick to game day predictions. And, our residential Eagles guru, Glenn Irby, was here right before you. He's, I think, to date through the first 4 weeks of the NFL season, Cafe Kratz, actually, I think Eddie Kratz picked the Vikings in week 2. Other than that, Irby's the first guest to go against the Eagles this week. He has the Cardinals. What's your score prediction for this Sunday game out there in the desert? Eagles at the Cardinals. Bird gang.
I hope I'm wrong, and everybody knows I love the Birds and I love watching them. But I think the biggest worry for me right now is that secondary and also Jake Elliott. I think he's going to really be missing if he's not able to play on Sunday. He was shaken up last week, and they went for it more than they needed to because they wanted to give him a break. I think they're going to do the same thing this week. If he's able to play, they're going to be more aggressive because they're going to want to rest him. I think the Eagles fall 24-20 against the Cardinals.
Ooh, wow. So you're the second guest of today. That's going
listen, they have to lose at some point, right? And it'll give them more motivation
we don't have
to go
to.
beat Dallas.
No,
they don't have to. That's true. But listen, more motivation to beat Dallas the following week. I think the Eagles fall. Listen, I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I think it's going to be a really good game looking at Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts. But I just think the Eagles fall this week and they fall short to the Cardinals out in Arizona.
Well, it could be a trap game. They could be looking ahead to Dallas, or they could just run into a buzzsaw, because on any given week, Kyler Murray can go off.
Right.
He's susceptible to the turnovers and the mistakes, but at times he can play elite. Of course, Kayla is one of our elite guests each and every week here on the Football Playbook. What do you got cooking this weekend over at Delmarva Sports?
Lots and lots of football. We've got some Salisbury University showcases coming this weekend. They're at the local college right near us. High school football is up and coming. We're getting closer and closer to seeing which teams will make the playoffs in November. Unfortunately, with the hurricane coming in, it's cold. So we're not used to here on Delmarva it being this cold this early, but we've got some really good football games coming up. We'll have coverage all weekend long. And then we'll also be taking a look at the Phillies as well, doing some stories on them. And the Delaware Bluecoats are starting out for G League basketball. So we're going to be going up to Wilmington and trying to do some stories on them as well. So it'll be a lot of fun things in store.
Yeah, I know you're excited about those Phillies.
Yeah,
the Sports Take guys at noon will have more on the Phillies for sure. And yeah, we got the hoodies, we got the furs, we got Kayla Santiago. Go follow her on Twitter, by the way, Kayla_Santiago1. And we'll do it again next week. Kayla, thank you so much for joining the show.
Can't wait. Go Birds. Hopefully I'm wrong about predictions this week.